We're always told to use our brains, right? To think our way to a better life with logic and reason. But what if that's actually the long way around? Today, we're going to dive into a really fascinating text called Spirituality Above Rationality, and it argues for a completely different path.
And the author just lays it all out there right from the start. What's the real shortcut to happiness? Is it the path of rationality, paved with logic and careful calculation? Or is there another way, a shortcut that relies on faith and intuition to get us there faster?
Okay, so before we can really get into this debate, we've got to be on the same page. Let's first break down what the author even means by a rational life. And honestly, it's the path most of us would probably consider our default setting.
So according to the author, the rational life is exactly what it sounds like. It's the one we're all taught to value. It's super methodical. You're using evidence, logic, hard facts to make every single decision. It's kind of like you're steering your life with a calculator in one hand and a rule book in the other, trying to avoid any emotional whims or ideas that haven't been proven.
And look, the author isn't just here to bash rationality. Not at all. They fully admit it has its strengths. They describe it as a shield, right? It protects you from getting ripped off, from falling into obvious traps, and it keeps you from getting, as they put it, kidnapped by your own emotions. It's a pretty powerful defense system. But, and this is the big but, here comes the twist. For all that protective power, the author argues that rationality has a ceiling. It can only take you so far. And eventually, they claim, that very same shield starts to feel more like a cage. It traps your mind and walls you off from something bigger, from a higher state of being.
So, if rationality is a cage, then what's the key to get out? Well, this brings us right to the author's alternative path, the spiritual life.
And the spiritual life, as the author sees it, basically just throws that rule book out the window. It's like it runs on a completely different operating system. Instead of looking for external proof, you're guided by an inner compass, by faith, by your intuition, by that deep gut feeling that tells you you're on the right path, your destined path.
Okay, this slide right here, it pretty much boils the whole argument down to two words. On one side, you've got rationality, which the author links to calculation. Sync spreadsheets, pros and cons, always figuring the angles. And on the other side, you've got spirituality, which is all about spontaneity. It's about acting from a place of natural, authentic flow, not from a spreadsheet.
So where exactly does this rational path hit a wall? When does it just fail? To make this point, the author tells a pretty wild story.
So, picture this. You've got this massive, unstoppable mudslide just tearing down a mountain. And right in its path, there's a small van. Logic, physics, common sense, they all tell you exactly what's about to happen. And it's not good.
Except it doesn't. According to the story, this raging torrent of mud and rock comes to a dead stop, instantly, just inches from the van. The van has just enough time to drive away to safety, and only then does the mudslide roar back to life and continue down the mountain.
So, how do you explain that? This is the author's big challenge to the purely rational mind. From any scientific or logical standpoint, what just happened is impossible. There is no equation, no law of physics that can explain why a force of nature would just take a time out.
And the author's answer? Well, it's completely outside the realm of reason. They argue that the people inside that van had what they call heavenly fortune. In other words, a higher power literally reached in and bent the rules of the physical world to save them.
And to back this up, they pull out this amazing quote from the classic text Kai Jin Tan. Heaven's mechanics are most divine. What use is human cleverness? You see the idea here? In this worldview, our rationality is just human cleverness. It's our little limited attempt to figure things out. But spirituality? That taps into heaven's mechanics, a divine, powerful force that just operates on a whole different level, way beyond our understanding.
Okay, so believing in this higher mechanic leads the author to their most radical idea. And honestly, it might be the most controversial one, the concept of total surrender.
What they're suggesting is that the path to a truly spiritual life is to find something, it could be a person, a cause, a belief system, that just resonates with you on the deepest possible level, and then you surrender yourself to it, completely. It means you stop calculating, you stop weighing the pros and cons, and you just place your entire trust in it.
Now, to be fair, the author knows how this sounds. They even bring up the rational counterpoint themselves. Because, of course, the rational mind screams, "Whoa, hold on, blind trust is dangerous."
It would argue that any healthy spiritual path has to have balance, right? You need openness to faith, sure, but you also need a sharp awareness of reality and your own limitations.
But the author pushes back on that idea of balance. They use a real-world example, pointing to a community they call the second homeland. And according to their telling of the story, the only people who really made it, who thrived in that community, were the ones who had total, unquestioning trust. The ones who kept their rational, skeptical hats on. They couldn't do it. They eventually left.
So where does this all leave us? At the end of the day, according to the author, this choice between the two paths literally determines the entire feel, the very texture of your life.
And the contrast they paint is pretty stark. The rational life, with its constant need to calculate and protect yourself, is just exhausting. It leads to a life that's complex, full of anxiety, full of fear. But the spiritual life, the one based on trust and surrender, that's presented as the path to a life that is simple, happy, free, and full of joy.
So this is the author's final takeaway, their prescription for how to live. To them, the spiritual path is about letting go of the controls and entrusting your life to a higher power, or just to the natural flow of things. And your job becomes simple. Just be a good person. Be kind, be diligent, be honest, and treat life like a game, being at peace with whatever comes your way.
And that brings us to the final, really provocative question the author leaves us with. If life really is a game, how are you playing it? Do you dare to play?